Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Corporate and Budget Scrutiny Management Board. I'm Councillor Luke Giles and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. Please can I ask all attendees to mute your microphone unless you are speaking. If anybody wishes to speak, please use the raise your hand facility or message in the chat box. I will invite you to turn your microphone on at the appropriate time. When you've finished speaking, please remember to turn your microphone off. If anybody's having any technical problems during the meeting, can you please contact Alex Goddard. Finally, can I ask all scrutiny members to introduce themselves in turn. Bob Piper first, please.
Yeah, Councillor Bob Piper, Vice Chair of the Adults Social Care and Health Committee.
Liam Priest.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Liam Priest. I'm the Vice Chair of the Children's Services and Education Scrutiny Board.
Laura Rollins, please.
Councillor Laura Rollins, Chair of Economy, Skills, Transport and Environment Scrutiny Board.
Elaine Giles, please.
Councillor Elaine Giles, Chair of Adult and Social Care and Health.
I believe we're still waiting for Paul Moore, are we? So we'll move to the agenda. Any apologies for absent?
None received, Chair.
Okay. Members to declare any interests or matters to be discussed in tonight's meeting. Elaine Giles, please.
Yeah, with the item 4 on the agenda, my husband works for Sandwell.
Thank you for that. And if we can note that, Alex, also my father does as well.
Chair, sorry, I don't think I necessarily need to declare an interest, but I will. I'm a former director of the Birmingham Airport.
Okay. Have we got them, Alex?
Thank you, councillors.
Additional items of business. There is one additional urgent item of business, which is Birmingham Airport update, will be covered later on in the agenda. So we'll move to item number 5, the town funds. I'm going to move this to Tammy to present. Is that right? You there?
Yes, hi everyone. We did have a presentation. Rebecca, thank you. If you could just move to the first page, please. Thank you. Yes, so we've brought a presentation to the Scrutiny Board today to update you on the work we've been carrying out over recent months on the Towns Fund, and specifically to discuss 2 issues. The first issue is the process we've used to identify Town Fund projects. And the second issue is to seek your input on how elected members can be further engaged with the process going forward. On the points of engagement with elected members, we have received some mixed feedback from elected members, and I think it's fair to say that elected members that have a position on the board have felt very much engaged with the process, whilst some ward members have expressed some concern that they've not felt fully engaged as part of the process. We have been working at pace over the last few months, given the tight deadlines around the Towns Fund and given the difficulties we have with consultation at the moment, given the ongoing pandemic. But we have engaged with a wide range of stakeholders, including residents and through young people's forums. We will go into more detail in the presentation around this, but it's this future engagement piece that we would specifically like Scrutiny Board's views on. If we move to the next slide, please, Rebecca. So just as a reminder and to set some background and context, The Towns Fund was announced by government in September 2019. At that time, they announced that 101 towns could apply for up to 25 million per town. The 101 towns were selected by government, and local councils were not able to suggest different towns. In Sandwell, West Bromwich, Rowley Regis and Smethwick were selected, and we did do very well to get 3 of our 6 towns selected. The only other place that did better than us was Cornwall. So the only other region that got more than 3 towns was Cornwall. The Towns Fund announcement was part of the government's Levelling Up agenda, and that Levelling Up agenda is to address some of the growth inconsistencies across the country and was to rebalance the focus away from major cities. Following the announcement of the Towns Fund in September 2019, we were expecting detailed guidance to be published in early 2020, but that detailed guidance was pushed back due to the pandemic, and it wasn't released until July 2020. And that guidance set out some specific requirements in relation to governance and expectations around the types of projects that the Towns Fund would support. There are 3 main themes within the Town Fund that the government will support, and they're around urban regeneration, planning and land use. So this is about ensuring town centres are thriving by increasing density in town centres, strengthening local economic assets, undertaking site acquisition and remediation, and bringing those town centre sites back into active use. The second theme is around skills and enterprise infrastructure, and this is around ensuring towns have the space and support skills. It's about ensuring that towns have the space to support skills development and also have the space to support small business development. The final theme is connectivity, and this one is around local transport networks and local transport schemes, so cycling and walking schemes, and also improved digital connectivity. So it's important that our town investment plans and projects broadly align with these key themes. I just want to quickly mention the accelerated funding programme. In September this year, I think it was, government announced an early allocation of 750,000 per town. That funding was on the condition that we could spend the money by the end of the financial year, so by the end of March 2021, or basically in 6 months' time. We put forward some projects that we thought were deliverable, quick win projects, and the good news is that we were allocated the full £750,000 per town. The money will be spent on a variety of interventions around cycling, park investment, public building improvements, and new outdoor market stalls in West Bromwich. Moving on to governance, which is the next slide, please, Rebecca. We have a fully constituted board in place for the Towns Fund, and in accordance with the government guidance, the board is chaired by a representative from the business community. Our chair is Jude Thompson, who's the president of the Black Country Chamber of Commerce. The Towns Fund Super Board has delegated authority to approve the town investment plan. The deputy leader and Councillor Millard, in his role as cabinet member for inclusive economy, are voting members on the board, and other members include the SCVO, police, local MPs and the combined authority. In terms of the local boards, which is the tier underneath the Towns Fund Super Board, these are advisory boards to the Super Board, so they make recommendations to the Super Board. The local boards are again chaired by local business representatives. In terms of councillor members, all the cabinet members are members of one of these local boards, and so are the town leads for that specific town. So for Rowley Regis, Councillor Lorraine Ashman is a board member. For Smethwick, Councillor Zahur Ahmed is a board member, and for West Bromwich, Councillor Steve Melia is a board member. I'm going to hand you over to Rebecca now to pick up on the presentation. Rebecca, do you want to take over?
Thanks very much, Tammy, and good evening, everybody. I'm Rebecca Jenkins and I'm managing the Sandwell Towns Fund programme. I've got a few slides to take you through that gives you some information around the programme timeline and then gives you some information about the process that we've used to create the town investment plans for each of the towns. Please do feel free to interrupt me at any point. I can't see the hands up because I'm in presentation mode, so please do just interrupt me if you need to. So the slide that you've got up here just explains to you the overall timeline for the Towns Fund programme. We're currently in phase 1, that's the purple chevrons at the top of the line here, and we're working towards the middle of this process flowchart that shows us submitting the town investment plans at the end of October as part of cohort 2. If those town investment plans are accepted by government, they will then lead to an offer of heads of terms and then the announcement of a town deal. We would then proceed on to this bottom line, which is the phase 2 and the blue colouring, and that's where for each of the projects we would start compiling a full business case for each of the projects. So this takes all of the proposals that you'll hear about later today into an additional level of detail. Those would then be subject to a second gateway review by government, and if government are happy with our proposals at that stage, they would release funding to us and we'd proceed into phase 3, which is delivery of the projects. I'll just move on to give you an overview now of the process of how we've compiled the town investment plans for each of the towns. We've broadly broken the work down into 2 key stages, the first of which was around the ideas generation stage, and the second of which is around developing the interventions. The ideas generation stage started way back in September with initial ideas being gathered, and then our work began in earnest when we received that detailed guidance only a few months ago. So the ideas generation phase consisted of us looking both at the evidence base for each of the towns, compiling ideas for interventions that could lead to projects, thinking around priorities for each of the towns and conducting engagement. And I think in terms of engagement in general, it's important to emphasise that we haven't been starting from a blank piece of paper with the Towns Fund. A lot of our work has drawn very heavily on the detailed engagement that was conducted as part of Vision 2030, as part of the inclusive economy deal from last year, and from all the rich variety of survey work that is ongoing throughout the council. So that's the first stage of our work, the ideas generation. That closed at the end of August in line with our first resident survey, which ran through August. So the second stage of how we have developed the tips was developing the interventions. This started off with our project prioritisation process, which I'll explain in a little bit more detail over the next few slides. And so we prioritised the projects and then have worked to develop an outline business case for each of those projects before it is included in the tip with our submission later this month. In terms of project prioritisation, I'll take you through some of the details of this. The process was designed in accordance with the guidance that we received from government. It was also reviewed by our Towns Hub delivery partner, and it was approved by Superboard before we applied this to our projects. So this diagram just shows you the process that we have been through. After we completed stage 1 of generating all the ideas, we sifted all those ideas to make sure that the ideas coming forward were broadly compatible with the Towns Fund guidance, also that they make a clear contribution to Vision 2030 and our inclusive economy aspirations. It was also a test to make sure that those ideas would be a capital proposal, because Towns Fund is about capital funding, and also to make sure that the tip would be the most suitable route to take that project forward. If those projects then passed that SIFT initial test, they were then formed a long list that we checked back with our local board, and each of those long listed projects had a project performer completed and then underwent a scoring activity. The purpose of the scoring was to assess each of those projects fairly, make sure then that we had a reasonable decision-making framework to put forward a proposed shortlist to the Super Board. At the point then that we had got our shortlist of projects, those were then presented to each of the local boards for discussion and comments. We then undertook a second layer of engagement on the proposed shortlist, and that took the format of a second stage resident survey, some further conversations with local elected members, specific discussions with a young people's reference group, and all of those comments were fed back to Super Board ahead of their approval of the shortlist, and that approval was granted, I think it was 2 weeks ago, by Super Board. I'm just going to pause at that point for any questions, because I appreciate that I've taken you through quite a few flowcharts that aren't the easiest to digest, so I'll just pause there for a moment.
Is there any questions from any members? No? I'll just move on then.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we'll move on now. We've just got a very short presentation on each of the towns where we're going to take you through the shortlists, the shortlisted projects for each of the towns. I think we've got West Brom up first, and I'm joined today by Alex Oxley, who's going to take you through the projects that are being prepared for inclusion in the West Bromwich TIP.
Hello, good evening, board members. My name is Alex Oxley. I work in the council's planning regeneration team, and you've just been hearing about the governance process and the project prioritisation process, so I'm sure you'd be interested to hear about what that has ultimately culminated in from a West Bromwich point of view. We have going through those aforementioned processes, come to a final 6 shortlisted projects in West Bromwich. I will summarise each of the 6 for you, just quickly give you a quick run through, and sort of have to take any questions or comments at the end. So first on the list, as you can see, is a regeneration of Sandwell College's engineering campus, which is based on Phoenix Street. This project is obviously part of the skills agenda and building engineering and construction skills, bringing those to West Bromwich, which is obviously, when you think about the context of HS2 and raise your gaze to some of the things that are coming to the region, HS2 and the metro extension are going to be obviously very important skills for us to develop between our adults and young people. In addition to the fact that obviously the government agenda now is about repurposing your skills and so looking for new avenues in that respect. Second shortlisted project is the Digital Den, which is again about increasing levels of digital skills in West Bromwich and providing online access and support to people in an attempt essentially to reduce levels of digital exclusion, which we know are high in the town. The third project is West Bromwich Town Centre Development, which is a fairly ambiguous name, but it's a bit of a Goliath of a project. It's one of the projects that's taking up a large amount of the budget, as you can see, at £13 million. But it's probably important to say that it's tackling one of the most difficult challenges faced by West Bromwich, faced by most town centres, to be honest, in the decline of the high street and the decline of retail in town centres. So what that project is ultimately aiming to do is to consolidate and condense West Bromwich's retail offer and repurpose that and diversify that offer in the form of residential, high quality residential, bringing new homes into the town centre, leisure, increasing the quality and amount of green and public spaces in the town, which will ultimately serve to establish the easternmost part of town as a high quality living and leisure environment. The next project, Rebecca, I noticed that a couple of slides down, I think, is a map. And just for the next two project overviews, it'd be helpful if we could just switch on to that. Thank you. So as you can see, the next project I'm going to talk around is the Green Corridor in West Bromwich, which is identified by a rather unhelpful blue sort of shading on the map that you can see in front of you. But as you can see, it is identified with the urban greening element there. Essentially, what this is looking to do is inject a little bit of vibrancy and greenery into the easternmost part of the town centre. Anybody who, as I'm sure you will have, been to West Brom recently, you will know that there is very little in the way of green space in that part of the town centre. And we obviously recognise as a project team that we have Dartmouth Park directly on the link to the town centre. I think it's around about a 4-minute walk, but is otherwise very underconnected or underused, and the connection is poor between the town centre and what is essentially a massive asset. So it's about creating a green corridor essentially from the town centre up to Dartmouth Park, which will hopefully encourage people to use that area. And the second penultimate project on the West Bromwich shortlist is the West Bromwich Sustainable Travel Scheme, which you can see represented by 2 cycle routes. There is an additional one, so 3 across the town investment plan area, but essentially improving sustainable transport in the town. And improving the cycle routes, which have been identified as part of the council's walking and cycling infrastructure plan. So the costings are there, the policy is in place to facilitate those routes quickly, which is good. And then finally, if you, Rebecca, are okay, just to sort of jump back up to the slides above, please, is finally the West Brom Town Hall Quarter. Which is, again, a large project that we're looking to redefine what the town hall really is in West Brom. Obviously, the town hall is a massive cultural and local asset, and it's something that is synonymous with the town centre. But the project around that will ultimately be looking to bring more uses into the town hall. Creating a more varied mix of uses as part of that as well, and ultimately just renovating that so it's fit for purpose. So that is a summation really of the 6 main projects that will be taking up the £25 million ask of the Towns Fund. And then if we go on to the next page, thanks Rebecca, is the aforementioned accelerated funding projects, which as Tammy alluded to, we were successful in bidding for, which is excellent news. These consist of the outdoor market redevelopment, which, again, if you can picture yourself in West Bromwich, you'll know that Princess Parade, Duchess Parade, the High Street area of West Bromwich is heavily dominated by the existing market stall structures, which I've only ever heard being referred to as either robust or some sort of polite way of saying that they're not really very attractive, but they serve a purpose. And what this project is about is creating bringing some vibrancy to that part of town, injecting some colour, making those structures, which are a big part of the high street, more functional and more attractive, and improving the visual amenity of the area. We know, having done some opinion polling in the area, specifically the Princess Parade part of West Bromwich, that one of the main concerns of residents or one of the main observations from residents is that the area is tired, the area is dull, the area is uninspiring. So this is a project to really sort of add that visual stimulus to the area, and as well as future-proofing, I suppose, what obviously we as a council recognise is a very important economic and cultural asset in the outdoor market, and obviously we appreciate that that's used by a lot of people and serves quite a niche market, or each market trader serves its own niche market, I suppose. So very keen to obviously keep that. And the final thing is with the accelerated funding is the improvements to the town hall, which is sort of essentially building works to the tower. But what that does is really signify and kick off the wider scheme of works to the town hall, which I went through in the aforementioned section and in the main body of the tip. So I hope that's a fairly succinct overview of the projects going on in West Bromwich, and I hope you would agree with myself and the project team in that they are a varied and interesting mix of projects that will hopefully have a transformational impact on the town centre. I'm happy to sort of field any questions.
Thanks, Alex. Chair, would you like us to pause for questions there, or do you want us to proceed with the presentation for Rowley Regis?
If anybody's got any questions, they can obviously just put their hand up as we go along, and I'll interrupt as we go along, but nobody's indicating at the moment. So if we can proceed, and then obviously if members do want to stop the presentation, if they just put their hands up, and I'll obviously interrupt if that's okay with yourself.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so we'll proceed then on to the presentation for Rowley Regis. So if I could introduce Alan Reynolds to you, he's going to take you through the projects for Rowley Regis.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, my name's Alan Reynolds. I work in the planning regeneration team. I've worked on this one since last September. Brief run through of our main threads in Rowley. As people will know, Rowley is a series of different communities. It's not one major town centre. Strong part of this has been recognising the fact those communities are quite strong but need better connections, better linkages, and a lot of the themes running through here relate to connectivity. Also aware of the need to represent all parts of Rowley Regis. The territory runs all the way from Tividale right down to the tip of Cradley Heath, so there are interventions across the whole area. The first one we have in here is for Britannia Park, the town park of Blackheath. This is one where the consultation process has kind of grown this project. It started out looking at the derelict changing rooms. It's kind of grown into something everyone we spoke to said this is a really important community resource. It needs investing in. At the heart of this will be a new community hub and changing rooms, better located to serve people, to encourage activity for investment in the park. Next one is an education facility in Cradley Heath. Now, this is a project that's been developed jointly with Sandwell College. One of the things we found from the evidence base of Rowley, young people, by and large, don't have great educational attainments, but more worryingly, they've got low ambitions. And one of the things that we got together with Sandwell College about was how to tackle this one. We feel there's a need for a college facility, particularly in the Cradley Heath area, which is something of a black hole in terms of accessibility to further education facilities. We're looking to develop something there. It's generated a lot of excitement already to provide basic skills training and basic education training, both to the 16 to 18s, to people who've missed that one in the 19 to 24 age group, but also to older people who, with the ongoing pandemic at the moment, there's going to be need for a lot of upskilling and retraining for people of all ages. So this is a really exciting facility. As you can see from the numbers there, it's probably the biggest single spending item there. The next two I'll group together. They're both canal improvements, taking the theme of connectivity. We've demonstrated elsewhere in Sandwell that if you improve a canal towpath, you get way more people using it for commuting, for enjoyment, for leisure, things like that. We're looking here at the Dudley No. 2 canal, which for those who don't know runs from Old Hill Station right up to Wimble End and Warrens Hall Park. We're also looking at the Albury Mainline canal running from Albury Town Centre at Rounds Green Road right out to the Netherton Tunnel branch in Tividale, with a further connection across under the new main line to link into Sheepwash Park. So we're looking at a network here of safe, healthy off-road routes. The next theme is, again, travel scheme, it's called, rather enigmatically. This refers to cycling and walking improvements on cycle paths and cycle lanes to connect up the main town centres. So this is from Oldbury through to Blackheath, right down to Cradley Heath, to generate more of a network of usable pedestrian and cycle routes. It's no point just doing odd little bits and pieces, you have to turn it into a network. So that's something else that's a particularly well-supported scheme. Following on from that, energy efficiency, looking to generate air source heat pumps, or to install air source heat pumps in regenerated blocks, which the council's housing revenue account is looking at investing in. We've identified 2 groups of blocks that will qualify for this within the 5-year period of Towns Fund. We're looking at Darley House and the surrounding areas in Whiteheath, and also at St Giles and Moorland in Reservoir Road as well. We've got 350 flats which will all benefit from having gas boilers replaced with air source heat pumps. This is obviously with the aim of generating clean growth and decarbonising the economy, but in conjunction with the works that housing will be doing to improve the flats and improve insulation, these will significantly reduce people's fuel bills, which is one of the key things in estates like that, where people do have particular issues with deprivation. Fuel poverty is a real issue across Rowley, as it is elsewhere in Sandwell. The other aspect of this particular scheme, which I will just briefly touch on, is to give people a start in terms of improving their skill base to actually understand this new technology, to recruit trainees and apprentices who can work on maintaining and installing in future schemes these air source heat pumps, because they are something quite new to Sandwell. They are the way forward. The final scheme is Blackheath Town Centre bus interchange. There's quite a lot of work gone ahead in Blackheath over recent years. We still have an issue where, despite it being a relatively vibrant centre, I was there just last week, a lot of people using it just at the moment in the concept of a 15-minute town that you can walk to quite easily. It is, however, full of traffic. It doesn't have a bus station. It's the only town of its size in this part of the Black Country that doesn't. We're looking at an ambitious scheme here to remove through traffic, to reassign priorities away from cars towards public transport, towards pedestrians, towards cyclists, to encourage more people into the town and to make it a pleasanter place to be. And it will focus, I say it's a fairly major scheme, it'll take several years to develop. It'll focus around the marketplace in Blackheath to remove a lot of the traffic there and to deliver public space and a new quality bus interchange in partnership with Transport for West Midlands. So that's an overview of the main projects there. Do we want to look at the, there's a plan, it could be a clearer plan, but that just shows you how spread out the interventions are across the whole of the territory, and also just what a sprawling area that the Rowley Towns Fund is. As I said, it runs all the way from Sheepwash down to Cradley Heath, and you can see there's a fair spread of interventions there. Moving on to, I think, the accelerated funding projects. Again, these are grouped into 2 particular areas. We've got a total of 7 projects across Rowley Regis. We've got 2 of them which kind of pave the way, as it were, for cycling and walking schemes in Oldbury Town Centre, and again connecting Blackheath Town Centre with Rowley Regis Railway Station. Those will, as I said, pave the way for the future generation of pedestrian and cycling networks. And those are 2 quick projects that can happen within the current financial year. The remaining 5, I think it is, are all parks related, parks and green space related improvements. We were encouraged to put these in by the government in terms of accelerating funding criteria. Green space improvements not quite so favoured through the main towns funds, so we're looking at a range of short-term interventions. One of the things we found through the pandemic, and people are telling us, is they're using their local parks and green spaces far more. People appreciate what they have on their doorsteps. What we have across Rowley is a good number of green spaces and parks. However, for reasons all of us on this call realise, the council's not been able to invest in those in the way it would have liked in terms of upgrading infrastructure in recent years. So we're looking at a series of small targeted improvements across 5 different open spaces, which again will encourage people to use them. And we're looking at Warrens Hall, Hayden Hill Park, there's Tividale Park, and I think there are 2 more as well, which I've momentarily forgotten. Bearmore Open Space, play equipment there. So these are and Britannia Park, the demolition of the existing changing rooms, which is something of an eyesore. So that's a very quick run through, and I'm happy to take any questions people might have about what we're doing, both the accelerated programme and the Mains Towns Fund in Rowley.
Thank you, Alan. So we'll proceed with Smethwick then, and I'll introduce you to Hayley Inslee to talk around the Smethwick TIP projects.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, everybody. So I'll just run through quickly the shortlisted projects. We initially had 16 projects submitted for Smethwick Towns Fund, totalling an ask of about 48 million. And through the prioritisation process, we came up with the 6 main projects that I'm going to explain now. The first one is a cycling and walking provision. This is investment into an extensive network of walking and cycling routes that will connect 2 railway stations, Smethwick Roll Street and the Smethwick Galton Bridge, to the town centre and further on to the 2 main regeneration areas of the new hospital and the aquatic centre. The scheme will improve the access and connectivity within Smethwick by delivering cycling and walking infrastructure improvements and improving the safety of those using it. It will provide a safe and cheaper alternative to the motor car and therefore assist in a number of other aims, such as reducing congestion onto the roads, improving air quality and contributing to the climate change agenda. It will also give people the choice of using a safe walking and cycling route to the regeneration areas and the high street. And it will also contribute to improving the health and the recreational opportunities for those people living and working and visiting the town. The next project is for Grove Lane. It's a regeneration project that aims to deliver housing around the new hospital. Grove Lane is a large-scale mixed-use area. It's generally industrial in nature at the moment. But it is adjacent to the new Midland Metropolitan University Hospital. The area was given housing zone status in 2016 and overall could accommodate up to 800 new homes, some of which are already being delivered on the Cranford Street site by Aurora Living. The council already are working collaboratively in conjunction with Birmingham City Council, West Midlands Combined Authority, Homes England, Canal and River Trust and the NHS Trust in looking at preparing a master plan for the wider Smethwick to Greater Icknield regeneration corridor, and obviously this site sits right in the middle of that corridor. The project we're seeking funding for is to acquire and remediate some selected sites on the Grove Lane area, and this will act as a first phase to a more comprehensive major regeneration project that will be phased over a longer period of time, but it will deliver much needed housing to the existing and future residents of Smethwick. The sites are located within existing council owned land and that has already been acquired by the combined authority. So this will give a larger public sector land holding and it will enable us to have more control over the future development of these sites. The next project is called Albion Family in the Park. The funding is sought to provide a new sports and community education facility specialising in alternative provision for the disadvantaged, disabled and BAME students in Smethwick. It will be run by the Albion Foundation, which is a registered charity working in partnership with West Bromwich Albion Football Club. And it works to deliver excellent alternative education, but it also involves working with children that have behavioural or education issues. It will deliver a youth-focused skills, education and recreational hub, and it will help to engage with Smethwick's youth. The proposal will complement the proposed improvements in West Smethwick Park that's been delivered by the lottery funding. The next project is centred around Roll Street. And in particular it's the Smethwick Enterprise Centre on Roll Street. This is a council-owned business facility in Smethwick, but it's falling into disrepair. The project aims to relocate the tenants currently within the Enterprise Centre, but then we will demolish the site and remediate the land, which will free up the site for a standalone development, which will provide an opportunity for Canalside residential scheme to come forward and also potentially incorporate some enterprise space. The site is in a sustainable location, being close to Smethwick Roll Street Station and Smethwick High Street, and will contribute to supporting the wider regeneration of the town and link to the other opportunities around the hospital. The fifth project is a Health Skills Hub. This is a project that's in conjunction with the hospital, as well as Aston University, Sandwell College and the University of Wolverhampton. And it will provide a training in healthcare and healthcare related positions from entry level to level 7 skills. By concentrating health education around a major anchor institution, the new further education and higher education university campus will be created in Sandwell, and it will obviously be the first university in Sandwell. It will also bring together the Learning Works, which is already existing, a nursing and midwifery school, development of an advanced clinical practitioner programme, a satellite school of pharmacy and a regional centre of excellence for health professions. So it will contribute to having education and skills for the health related industry. And the final project is the Ron Davies Centre. It's a multi-purpose education and skills facility in the heart of Smethwick, and it's run by Sandwell Adult Family Learning. The centre provides a rich and varied range of learning activities for residents, including adult learning, family learning and active targeting of careers advice to at-risk groups. It will also support apprenticeships, traineeships and work experience and internships. The investment sought is to create an additional 3 classrooms, and this will expand the quality and quantity of the courses for the Smethwick residents. So those are the 6 projects that came through the prioritisation process. If we could just move on to the slide. This shows a plan, and it shows the location of those 5 main projects in red, and obviously the green is the connectivity project. It is centred around like an arc of regeneration, east to west, but this is where we feel the main investment should lie. And then if we just move on to the next slide, as previously mentioned, we've been successful in obtaining £750,000 for an accelerated funding project. Given the tight time scale, we thought this would be one of the best projects to pursue, and it's phase 1 of the connectivity project that I've just discussed, and this will provide a cycle path along the A457 Tollhouse Way, linking Smethwick Gorton Bridge and Roll Street along the High Street. And it will also include pedestrian footway improvements to the entrance to the side roads, so it will provide an off-road safe environment for people to cycle within Smethwick High Street, and this is phase 1, and obviously the other phases will contribute as part of the wider Towns Fund. Happy to take any questions on that, if anybody wants to ask anything. No.
Thanks, Hayley.
Rebecca, Liam Priest wants to come in. If we can just bring Liam in for a second, please.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. I just wondered, has Rebecca got any more of the presentation to go? Because I have a few. I have one general question to ask about the scheme as a whole, and I think it might be best left to the end of the presentation. I didn't know if this was the end of the presentation or if there's a bit more to go.
Councillor Priest, we've just got a couple more slides just detailing member engagement, so I'm happy to take the question now or proceed with the last couple of slides.
I'll wait till the end to ask it. Thanks.
Okay, if we carry on then with the last couple of slides. So in this slide here, I've just detailed the member engagement activity that has been taking place. As Tammy mentioned at the start of our presentation, we've had mixed feedback from members around whether they have felt sufficiently engaged and able to shape the Towns Fund proposal. So this is an outline of the activity that has taken place with members. We have obviously relied quite heavily on virtual discussions, which do have their limitations. And so that's something in terms of lessons learned as we move through into phase 2 and phase 3 of the programme that we really want to make sure we get right for members, so that all members feel part of these projects and bringing them forwards. So this is the detail of the member engagement that has taken place. On the next slide, we've just outlined some of the other range of engagement activity that has been taking place under the programme. And we've had 2 general surveys that we've reached out to residents and partners with, along with some specific work with young people, as that was identified as an early gap in our thinking around engagement. So we've had a young people's reference group in place for each of the towns, who we've been able to test priorities, encourage ideas to be brought forward, and also then test the proposed shortlists with. In terms of next steps in the programme, we're due to submit the town investment plans at the end of October. We will then be in the government's hands for them to conduct their gateway review. If we're successful with that gateway review, heads of terms will be offered and then a town deal announced. We would then move into that phase 2, which is around developing the detail of the business cases, and then on to phase 3, the project delivery. This is now my last slide. So these are just the general questions that we'd really welcome your input around these questions, or indeed anything to do with the presentation, which is around how we can ensure good engagement with councillors throughout the programme, both through phase 2 as we develop the specific details of the projects, and then phase 3, the delivery programme, potentially project orientated workshops, regular virtual updates, and continuing conversations around the broader project pipelines at town level. And then it's also a general question to you as Scrutiny Board in terms of how you would like to be involved in the next steps for the Towns Fund. Okay, thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and thank you everybody for doing your bits. Can I bring Liam in then, please? And then if anybody else wants to come in with any questions, then please raise your hands, please.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, just well, a few statements and then a question at the end. First of all, well done on the amount of work that you've done. I think you have had to work to some very tight deadlines, and the COVID-19 situation has only worked to make the I think the pressure a little bit more intense on an already truncated timeline for the project. So well done on submitting everything we've got. I think you're right to say that there was mixed feedback, especially at the start of the member engagement. I think, as you said, so some members who perhaps didn't have town lead roles or cabinet roles did feel perhaps they were confronted with a fait accompli with what was going to happen. However, I think that has been improved over the last couple of months through the town board meetings. I think you've got a lot more member engagement now than you had in the past. It is really good to see the amount of funding across all 3 proposals that's going into green transport and green infrastructure to allow people to get around a lot better without necessarily using their cars. It's also good to see the amount of match funding that's being applied for on these projects as well, and it's something that I think I'd like to stress that we keep doing, because I think certainly in my own, well, the part of the town I represent, West Bromwich, I think we learned that through the public, although that had a very checkered, a very difficult birth, put it that way. That project did bring in more investment to the town, so I think investment brings more investment sometimes, doesn't it? And I think if we can really maximise our match funding on these projects, we can hopefully carry on this work beyond the scope of the Towns Fund, beyond the lifetime of the Towns Fund deal and its financial resource. And also it's very good to see the strategic asset purchasing taking place on a couple of the bids as well. I think, over the last 10 years especially, it's felt as an authority that we've been forced to sell off a lot of what we own in order to balance our books, and it's nice to see that we are thinking quite hard about what we could perhaps buy now to invest in for the future, get a good return for the ratepayers in Sandwell. My question is around the process right at the very start of this, and Chair, there is a line of questioning that I want to pursue with this. There is a reason that I'm asking this question. I understand that this is central government funding, and the government decided who would get the money. Did we have to make these bids to government when the Towns Fund deal was announced, or did government invite us to make these bids? And I think, as I say, as I go through my questions, it will become clear why I'm asking this. Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to come in on that one, Tammy, or Rebecca, whoever?
Yes, I'll come in. Sorry, Rebecca. You go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. So government have invited us to put forward the tips. So that's how the application process has been done, in the sense that we were told that we've been put forward in the Towns Fund, and the tip that we'll submit at the end of October is us confirming that we want to proceed and putting forward our details of what we'd like to use the funding for. So,
right, okay.
Is there anything you want to add?
But Councillor Priest, if I just come in, we didn't get to influence what those three towns were. That those were determined by government. We didn't put in any sort of express ask around having the funding specifically for West Bromwich, Rowley Regis or Smethwick.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, if I may just pursue a line of questioning just a little bit, Chair, just for a short period. I think, so to be clear in my head, the government said that West Bromwich, Smethwick and Rowley are eligible for this funding. That's the correct position, right? Okay. It just seems, it seems to me, obviously, Chair, this is an issue close to your heart, and excuse me, I'll just close the door 1 second. I know it will be an issue close to your heart, Chair, as a Wednesbury councillor, and I know it's something you, Councillor Pete Hughes and Councillor Costigan have been very vocal about in every forum, is that the lack of funding for Wednesbury. And the reason why I'm bringing this up as a West Bromwich councillor is Wednesbury is my hometown, although I don't live there anymore. It's a place that I still care about. And I wanted to make it clear, I suppose, through your answers, and you have made it clear, that it wasn't Sandwell Council that decided this. It was central government that decided that Wednesbury wasn't eligible. And I suppose the other issue I wanted to touch on was that, in terms of, and this is a political point, so I don't expect the officers to respond to it, but in every constituency, every parliamentary constituency in Sandwell, there has been a significant amount of investment apart from West Bromwich West. And it just strikes me as unfortunate that the member for West Bromwich West is the only one that doesn't have this funding. And I would have thought and hoped he would have tried a bit harder to get it. So that's just my personal disappointment on that part, or on his part. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks for raising that, Liam. It saves me a job. Can I bring Bob Piper in now?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I've already made my views known about this, to be honest, to Tammy and Rebecca and Hayley and Santok and Alan Taylor and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, really, to be honest. So I don't propose to go through the full rant at this meeting as well, really, but I think my biggest concern of the whole process was the almost total exclusion. And I appreciate entirely, can I say at the outset, the points that Liam made about the concentrated time with which consultation can be carried out and the difficulties around COVID, but the almost total lack of involvement of elected members who weren't either cabinet members or town leads in the whole process, surpassed only by the almost total exclusion of the public, for want of a better word, the people of Sandwell, I think looking through the figures, there's something like 500 or 600 people out of nearly 250,000 people in the areas affected have actually responded to say whether they thought the ideas were good, bad or indifferent, really. I think if there's a lesson we can take out of this entire process, it has got to be about being able to engage much, much stronger, because Liam says that things have improved recently. Well, they have improved recently. I've had much more discussion since we found out actually that my ward was getting nothing at all. I've had much more discussion after the decisions have been taken than was actually possible before the decisions were taken. So I think from my point of view, one of my residents in a residents group the other day described the whole thing is like watching giraffes mating. He said it all takes place over your head. It's all very messy, and you're never quite clear at the end of it what the conclusion was, really. So I think that sums it up, really. It all seemed to take place miles away from us, and all we knew at the end of it was actually, as far as my ward was concerned, we weren't getting anything anyway, really. But I don't consider my ward to be the most deprived in Sandwell, and I do think there are greater priorities, but I do feel that there were some sensible ideas put forward that could have been much better explored than a walkway between the hospital and the swim baths, to be honest. But those are my personal opinions, and I won't go through the full rant now.
Thanks for that, Bob. Can I move to Paul Moore now, please?
I'm sorry I was a bit late. Unfortunately, I had another meeting. Can I just double check? Was the proposal around the Toll House Way cycling? Has that already been covered? Has it?
Yes, it has, hasn't it, Rebecca? Yeah.
Okay. I suppose my concerns around this are around the council's approach to cycling infrastructure generally, and they just. A general approach to cycle infrastructure feels very disjointed to me, with kind of various pop-up lanes appearing as part of the emergency transport funding. And again, the particular scheme for Smethwick to me it looks like another scheme that doesn't really join up to anything. I think we need to be far more strategic, really, about where we're investing in cycle infrastructure across the borough. I mean, arguably the best thing that we have done is the work around the canal towpath, and I'd like to see a lot more work like that, really linking the towns up rather than kind of sporadic infrastructure of a few 100 metres here and there, which seems to be kind of what we end up with.
Do you want to respond on that one?
Just to say that we have recently adopted the Sandwell walking and cycling infrastructure plan, which sets out our long-term aspirations to join up all the cycle networks. So in terms of Councillor Moore's comments around them being disjointed, it's our ultimate aim to deliver a whole cycle network. It's just we're delivering certain parts in certain timescales depending on the funding available and the deliverability of the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I move on to Laura now? Laura?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point on the engagement. As one of the, obviously, I had this item to the Economy, Skills, Transport and Environment Scrutiny Board back in, I think, February time. But as one of the local councillors for West Bromwich Central, I hadn't been contacted for, in any capacity in terms of getting a view or looking at any proposals. And I think that is where members have felt that there was a complete lack of engagement, because had I not been on the scrutiny board that I was on as a local representative, I wouldn't have been aware of it at the time. And I think that's probably where the improvement needs to be made. Thank you.
Does anybody want to respond to that, or can we move on?
We did attend a number of the town meetings to discuss the proposals, but clearly our approach to attending those meetings hasn't worked for everybody. So I think that's why we're looking at further ideas through the scrutiny board as to how we can improve engagement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Elaine Giles?
I just want to back up the others as well. It would have been nice to have some more information before the decisions was made and to have some more input.
On that note, would any of the members like to move a recommendation or on consultation with members? Liam, did you put your hand up then, or you took it back down?
No, I'll put it up, Chair. I don't know if I want to suggest this as a formal recommendation, Chair. It'll be up to your judgment whether you think it's one. If you can hear a hairdryer in the background, I am sorry, my children are just having their hair dried. I think picking up on the general frustration with members around consultation initially and the frustration that I share as well, I think it'd probably be worth officers continuing with their engagement through the town board meetings, because I think, you know, that's a forum where you get every member for that town attending, but also being very clear and specific with members around exactly what stage of the project we are at now in their town and what's coming next. Because I think that if we are successful in moving this forward to a stage where having the funding released and we start to see these projects being built in the real world, I as a member would appreciate just an email to say, you know, we're going to start breaking ground on this project in a month's time or in a week's time, or we're looking for a contractor on this particular issue. So just to, you know, I think officers just need to bear in mind just to be very clear and specific around what's happening now and what's next, and that can be achieved through the board meetings, but also in between those meetings through emailing the councillors for each town and just laying it out in very simple terms for them. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Liam. Anybody else want to come in on anything? No. Obviously, the members have expressed their concerns about member engagement, and I'm going to echo that and echo once again Liam's thoughts on, I mean, the lack of investment into Wednesbury. But obviously, if we was guided by the government, then we are kind of restricted with that. Bob Piper wants to come in as well, so I'll just bring Bob Piper in.
Yes, sorry, Chair. At the end of the presentation, there were a couple of questions that we were asked to give some consideration to, actually, and one was how we can engage with elected members going forward, really. As presumably as the projects develop now. I think I said last week at a meeting in Smethwick that it'd be embarrassing really for members in my ward and presumably in those towns where there are no money being spent at all, to try to explain this to the general public as to how this money is being spent, because when there's nothing in it for you, you're likely to get a bit of a salty response, really. So, but I do think it is necessary for those members where they've got big projects taking place in their area to really get some engagement with the public now, because to be honest, when we get round to elections next year and people are seeing all this money is being spent and they don't know anything about it and they've had no consultation over it, people are not going to be the slightest bit pleased about it. So I think there is a big job to do once the projects get approval, and there is going to be some work actually done to engage with the public as part of that.
Do you want to respond on that, Tammy, or?
No, I agree with Councillor Piper that in terms of these projects, in order for them to be successful, we need all our partners and our stakeholders to be involved and brought into the projects, and that includes local residents. So we will come forward with a programme to make sure that all the stakeholders and our residents are fully informed.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just one of my thoughts is whether you could do like update emails to all members just explaining where we're at and what we're doing and what the next step is, similar to what Liam requested. I want to thank everybody for joining in on that presentation. It was quite a long and quite detailed presentation, and it was really beneficial for us as members. And I just want to thank you very much for that. If there's no other comments, we'll move on to the next item, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah, thank you very much, people. Thank you. I'm going to move to exclude the press and public from the next item. So that the press and public are excluded from the rest of the meeting. This is to avoid the possible disclosure and information under the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, which was amended by the Local Government Access to Varied Information Order 2006, relating to the financial and business affairs of any personal person, or including authorities holding this information. So I need somebody to move that for me, please.
Move or second?
Second, sorry.
That's seconded, Chair.
So with that seconded, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes while we disconnect from the live stream and move into private session.